You're listening to the Mississippi Outdoors Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Wyatt, and today we're talking CWD testing, but potentially a way that maybe is new to you, new to me. Scrapes, finding scrapes and testing that way. We're going to talk about it with Kamen Campbell on the show.
Mississippi Outdoors is sponsored by Entergy Mississippi. Entergy is building a stronger and cleaner grid to power a brighter future and protect our great outdoors for generations to come.
You're listening to the Mississippi Outdoors Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Wyatt. And today, Kamen Campbell with the deer program here at Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. And we're talking about scrapes, right?
That's the goal.
That's the goal. Specifically, some testing, some CWD testing related to scrapes that you're involved in and recently wrote an article that was in the Mississippi Outdoors magazine, right?
Correct. So we partner with Mississippi State University. We've got an excellent relationship with them, doing all sorts of whitetail deer management and wildlife management in general. And the scrape sampling is part of a bigger picture of looking at environmental samples where you don't have to have a dead deer to figure out if there's disease on the landscape. You can pull the disease or look for the disease in the scrapes instead.
Yeah. And in reading the article that you wrote, that's sort of, one major factor that we got to make sure we understand is this is a way to test for CWD that doesn't require a dead deer. Like that's a major sticking point, isn't it? It's
a major benefit. Yeah. And there's parts of the state where the hunters are reluctant to submit samples because they're afraid of the regulations that are going to come with that. So we get low testing in some parts of the state. Other parts of the state, we don't get many samples from because the deer densities are a lot lower. So when a disease is more easily managed when it's found early, getting out there and finding that disease before you get a sample from a hunter gives us a leg up on the management of the disease.
Okay. All right. So scrapes. For anyone that may be watching, listening, that needs a good, strong definition of what is a scrape, how do you answer that?
So a scrape is going to be a pawed out area, generally 2 to 4 feet in diameter. And a lot of people think there's going to be a buck that makes a scrape, and he's going to tend to that scrape every few days and kind of keep it up. But in reality, it's several bucks that are using these scrapes. And part of the research in Mississippi State University has found that 80% of the time it is the bucks doing it, but a lot of does will also come and visit those scrapes. So when a buck makes a scrape, they're going to paw out an area that's 2 to 4 feet in diameter. It's generally going to be next to the base of a tree, but that's not because of the tree, it's because of the licking branch. And they will not make a scrape on the ground unless there's an overhanging branch that's going to be anywhere from like 3 to 5 feet in the air above that scrape.
Okay.
They'll pee in the scrape. The tarsal gland that'll release a pheromone into the scrape, and then they'll chew and rub the licking branch above it.
Okay. You find those things, you've got a scrape. Pawed out area, 2 to 4 feet, adjacent to a tree, but it's not the tree itself. It's that overhanging branch or whatever. You'll see it chewed on. Right. And now we got a scrape. But okay, again, to define it, a lot of people will know this, some won't. But what you're saying is this is not just one deer that's going and doing this, one buck. This is, in most cases, is that right? Multiple
Correct.
Deer.
So the research MSU did a couple of years ago looking at scrape activity and behavior found that an average of 7 bucks use each scrape. And they're putting trail cameras on the scrapes and looking at different behaviors. They found an average of 7 bucks using a scrape. And then they actually had one scrape that had 39 different bucks that visited the one location.
The one location.
Which is one reason it's good for us to be able to test those areas for CWD, is because we're not just testing one deer when we test a scrape. We're testing a significant portion of the population by testing a few of these scrapes.
And potentially not just bucks, but does as well.
Correct.
Okay. So now we've got the picture. Scrapes, kind of what they are. They're almost little gathering spots or hubs of traffic, if you will. It's going to involve urine, potentially saliva, hair, that kind of stuff because of what they're doing in these areas with multiple deer. Now, how are you testing for CWD without a dead deer? How does that happen?
So the sample that we're collecting, there's a couple labs in the country that are capable of running these tests. Mississippi State University is getting set up to go that direction in the next year or so. But we're taking about a pint of soil from the top of that scrape, And this is a test, it's amplification test. So they're taking very few prions and amplifying them so that you can find them in the test result. So we're taking and scraping the surface of that scrape with either a local stick, and some gloves, and trying to get a quart of soil. They're actually trying to refine the methodology right now to use like a little soil plug, like a little plunger where you can take several samples around the scrape and just get a handful of dirt. And then they wash it. It goes through a series of washes and chemicals to where they can confine the contaminants down to a very small area, and that's what they run through the machine.
Okay. I'm almost thinking of like on a golf course when they move the hole on the greens, they've got the machine that pull the plug out, move it. Now we've moved the location.
That's exactly what this is, except it's one little plastic plug that you do by hand. But yes, same concept.
So you're pulling those samples out of the ground.
Correct.
Pretty much. The test. I was looking at the acronym for the test. Stands for it stood for real time quaking
induced conversion.
The short version, RT-QuIC, is kind of the acronym there.
The test is kind of anything but that. So once they have the soil prepped and ready for analysis, when they stick it in the machine, it takes about 4 days in order to get their test result back. So you can imagine if a lab only has equipment to run 4 or 5 tests simultaneously, and you give them 100 results, you're not getting results back that week.
Right.
Matter of fact, it's be several months by the time that they run all the tests through there and get results back to you.
Okay. So even though we call it RT-QuIC, that's the letter that is not quick. I thought that was funny in reading the article that you wrote, pointing that out, that it does take a while to get the test back. Okay. Before we go much further, to kind of summarize what we're talking about here, this is relatively new, right? This is new, a new process, a new test, a new way of testing.
It's part of a multi-state research project that started, I think, in 2023 is when they started looking at it. And it's basically states wanted to be able to find an early warning system of when disease is popping up.
Okay.
Before prevalence is high enough for the hunters to turn in a positive deer. Okay. There's 9 different states that are a part of it. And the results have been pretty consistent from between states, surprisingly, as far as how early and how far you can detect it from other positive deer.
So this test, we don't have a dead deer. We have a sample of the soil. So urine, it could be hair, other things, right?
Correct. I mean, it's primarily going to be urine that's in the soil.
Okay. And so it's able to test. And why is that? This may be a dumb question, Kamen. Why is that? Why would that be early detection as compared to waiting on that sample to come in from a hunter or from one of the freezers?
So what we have found so far is that if there's very few deer in an area that have CWD, so when it first spreads to an area, it's just going to be in one buck or one doe, and then it's going to spread to different deer in that social circle, whether that's in a bachelor group of bucks through social grooming or within a family unit of does. But the odds of a hunter harvesting that one deer that's positive and turning in, the odds are very low.
Okay.
But if you go to a property and take a handful of scrape samples, you're sampling 50, 60 deer worth of, sampling all at the same time. Right. So it helps us to find it a lot earlier.
Okay. So it helps to find it a lot earlier. I'm jumping ahead to something you mentioned to me when we were talking before we started the show. There's this, interesting application. Okay, so let's jump ahead. The test comes back, what the time is from a scrape, positive for CWD. What does that mean for the people who hunt right there?
Okay.
Or in that area?
2 things. First, I'm going to clarify that when test results come back positive for CWD, because the test is considered experimental,
okay,
it's never scrape is never considered positive.
Oh, okay.
When you get a group of positive results back, the people running those at the lab will tell you that's strongly suggestive that the disease is in that area.
Okay.
But it's not 100% confirmatory test like the ELISA test that we use when we're testing lymph nodes on a hunter harvested deer.
Okay.
The second part of that is we'd have a perk for the hunters in the state. And there's a lot of negative that comes out of CWD management as far as people being afraid of regulations and taking away opportunity. But some states that have been successfully managing the disease is because they're removing or reducing populations right around those positives. The best place to find a positive is right next to where you already found a positive.
Sure.
So we have this 3-mile tag program that mimics what other states are doing, except we're not going in as a state agency and we're not sharpshooting or moving deer. we have this program that allows hunters that live within 3 miles of a positive can apply for these tags over the course of the summer. We'll mail them the tags that are property specific, not hunter specific. And that allows them to shoot any brown deer during any open season with any weapon. So that September velvet season we have, if they want to go out there with a 308 and use a tag, then they could harvest that deer with a rifle instead of a bow and arrow. Or if they want to exceed, shoot more bucks or shoot more does, it's extra tags they can use. And they can use the rifle the whole time. It's a free program, and the only, catch or the only requirement of the program is if they shoot a deer using one of those tags, that they have to turn it in for CWD testing.
For testing, if they use a tag. Wow. And that's a pretty, what's the word? I almost said revolutionary, significant, certainly significant measure that's attached to this for a hunter. I know I'm kind of repeating what you said, but within 3 miles of that scrape test, saying, hey, it's highly likely. If I'm hunting within 3 miles of that, I can apply for that tag. And in any open season, any brown deer without spots, I can take that deer with any weapon.
Correct.
At any time.
Correct.
That's a pretty...
It gives the hunters a lot more opportunity. We're not forcing them to harvest more deer or shoot younger bucks or anything else. It just gives them that extra opportunity where they can go and enjoy and recreate a little bit better.
Yeah. And then in turn, they get to sort of help and participate in the management of it, because then they're going to turn that in as a sample, and it helps you to manage it.
We get more samples in those areas to help, monitor the prevalence of the disease and, help it find it, spreading out from there, because those 3 mile circles that we have them apply for are constantly moving as people turn in more positives.
Yeah.
It includes new landowners that have the ability to apply for it.
And that's new coming up as of 2026?
We started that program about 4 years ago.
Okay.
And it originally was just areas around positive deer that were harvested. And last year we opened up areas that were around some of our scrape samples that tested positive.
Okay.
And we really made an effort last season to increase the number of hunters using those tags. We went from 30 or 40 hunters that were applying for them to well over 100, which is good, because when we get those samples back, about 20% of the deer harvested on those tags come back positive.
Do they?
There's no other program we have where we're getting a 20% positive return.
Yeah. What has been the reaction then in those 4 years that it's been around from the hunters in particular?
The people who are using the program, they really like it. We've had a couple people fall off and those people are in the very north part of the state where the disease has been around the longest. And they got the tags so they could shoot, a few extra deer. And the disease is actually controlling the population enough up there where they no longer want to shoot extra deer. They're just shooting the few they need for the freezer, and they're moving on.
Yeah.
But when people find out about it in other parts of the state, whether that's the zone we have down on the coast or in the South Delta, they're extremely excited about the opportunity.
Okay, so if we continue on this path, multiple states that are involved with the scrape testing that you're talking about, including us here in Mississippi. So if we extrapolate those kinds of results, that type of tangible feedback over the next, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, what next for this method of scrape testing? What do you think could be out there in the future?
I think it gives the state agencies an idea of where the disease is at compared to just relying on hunter harvested samples. There's several states that don't pull near as many samples as we do. We've been really fortunate with our hunters submitting samples and getting 8,000 to 10,000 samples a year for the last several years. But there's a lot of state agencies that are working with 10% that number of samples. And for them to be able to rely on the hunters to turn in the samples is difficult. But, as a country, if we're getting more environmental testing done, then the state agencies have a better idea where the disease is at.
Yeah.
Because it's not official test, we can't put regulations in place. We can't go to an area and test and say, okay, we found, what we think is some positive scrapes, and we're going to put it in a CWD zone. We can't do that. What we can do is notify the hunting clubs and do some press releases in those counties and say, hey, look, we did some sampling. It's strongly suggestive that the disease is in this area. And that way the hunters have the ability to make an informed decision and turn in more samples.
Yeah. You touched on this some in your article in Mississippi Outdoors Magazine. The USDA and the other that could, make this an official test, could deem it what does that take? Is that possible?
That's above my pay grade.
Yeah, it's
I think the intention is for it to become a certified test at some point in the future, but there's still some kinks that have to be worked out in it.
Mm-hmm.
For example, the test is not actually looking at prions that are in the soil. It's looking at particles that misfold like a prion, because a prion is a misfolded protein.
Yeah.
So whenever we go to a property and collect scrape samples, we're also collecting one more sample from an area we think deer have not, been in that area.
To compare.
And taking just a soil sample as a control, so they can look for some of those false positives on the property that might be cause, certain, minerals in the soil.
So it's really kind of for the method itself too. It's a matter of kind of building up that data to a point where you've got enough samples.
Correct.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I could see it becoming a certified test at some point in the future, but how many years down the road that is, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's almost like a good, this conversation's reminding me at its core, like our wildlife management team here at MDWFP, y'all are scientists, and this is the scientific method at work.
Yeah. I couldn't think of the word. And when he said, the control, I went, oh yeah, that's what they told me.
It took me a while to find it too.
Yeah, but I
was searching for it.
The control. Well, when you hang out with someone like me, I can lead the smart folks astray every now and then and kind of mix your words up too. But yeah, I think it's fascinating, really at any level of how, of what your level of involvement in hunting and deer hunting is. It's just fascinating to look at it and go, okay, this is a test that doesn't require, a dead deer, a sample. It's something that, whether someone wants to argue the validity of the test or not, what it does is it has a real effect immediately on the hunters in that area in terms of what is available to them with those tags, which has an immediate tie-in and direct tie-in to the data and, how quickly you're able to pull that data in that area. It's a pretty neat math equation how you've come up with that.
What I've appreciated so far is it's been proven to find it before the hunters are able to. It's not the hunters aren't willing to pull samples. In a lot of cases, it's just that the disease of the technique is able to find it earlier.
Yeah.
So when the CWD was found on the Louisiana side of the river from Claiborne County, we originally kept CWD out of the zone because the river was ruled as a barrier.
Okay.
And then we did some scrape sampling along that side, found a positive scrape, and then notified the hunters on that property and around the property, hey, look, it looks like it might be over here. They turned in a bunch of samples, and a few months later, we had our first positive deer on that side of the river. Mm. Then we had another of the river clubs on the Mississippi, or the Louisiana side of the river, did the same thing. Did some scrape research samples there, found a positive, notified the hunting club. They were already collecting 20, 30 samples a year. But they increased that to 120 in the first year they found a positive deer. Uh-huh. So it picked it up, before they were able to.
Okay. So again, back to the analogy of a math equation, you've already had plenty of examples of 2 + 2 is going to equal 4. It's just a matter of time. Right. So what about the Deer Lab at Mississippi State? Their involvement and partnership with Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks and our biologists like yourself. What has been their role? What is their role in this?
So they're coordinating the research end of it. They're, I guess, the point of the spear for the research, so to speak.
Okay.
There's a lab in Minnesota called MinPro that's actually running the analysis on the soil. But they're setting up the research project, partnering with other states to, refine the methodology and make sure that everybody's collecting the samples the same and trying to answer the same research question, which that question started out as being, A, can this soil test or environmental test pick up the prions? And B, how much better is it picking it up? Can it pick it up, 5, 10, 15, 20 miles beyond where the states have found it in a hunter-harvested deer? Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is you look at some of these states, almost every one of those states have found the prions in scrape results 15 or 20 miles past where the hunters had a positive deer. They set up these bands at 5, 10, 20, 25 to see how far the disease was beyond where the state had confirmed it. And then most of them found it all the way out to the farthest one they had sampled.
To the farthest one.
So it shows that it's really out there.
Yeah.
And it just takes a lot of hunter harvested samples to be able to find it.
Well, and what what is the message for Joe Hunter that they need to take away from this conversation as it relates to scrapes, as it relates to the areas they hunt? What do you want them to hear and take away from this?
I think the biggest thing is, as far as a state agency managing the disease, there are very few tools that are successful at managing the disease. And those tools are only successful when prevalence is really low, when the disease has only been there for a few years.
Okay.
So whether that's the state agency, pulling a few scrape samples in areas where we're curious about the disease, or if it's the hunters stepping up and submitting more samples, the sooner we can find it, the more successful we can be to manage it. And there's a definitive timeline associated with CWD. And it can be controlled for the first several years, and once prevalence rate reaches a threshold of 2 to 5% of the population, it grows exponentially, regardless of what regulations are in place. Unfortunately,
it's kind of like a roof in your leak in your roof. The sooner you can identify, I got a leak right there, and then find out where it is, the sooner you can take care of it before we got a massive problem. But if it takes too long to figure it out, I'm way too late figuring out that I got a leak up there, I'm gonna have a big problem.
correct.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, and really what we're saying here, I think, is this is something to be aware of, that because of this test and this technology, as it relates to a scrape, sort of a little gathering area, a little hub of activity in these deer populations, this is a way to find where, if we got a leak, way before it has already become a massive problem.
It's a way for us to look for it in areas where we're getting insufficient sampling, just to monitor whether it's there or not.
Yeah.
And if we can find it early, then we can let the hunters know about it. Hopefully they'll turn in some more samples, because they'll be curious if it's on their property or not. And then at that point, we can start to manage it better. Is
it crazy to say then that you could have a scenario where hunters just call you and go, hey, I got a scrape that I found. What about testing it? I mean, is that beyond the realm of possibility that you'd get that kind of call?
I have a couple of those calls already. A lot of them are through hunting clubs that I've worked with that are interested in having their properties sampled. Unfortunately, it's not really a service that we can offer to the general public looking for it.
Gotcha.
Partly because the sample is really expensive for us to do. That kind of limits our budget to maybe pulling 300 total scrapes across the entire state. So we're pretty selective about the properties we're going to pull them on.
So you have to be selective, and it's got to be in certain geographical areas. It can't be in one place,
Right.
and that sort of thing.
Our samples are kind of split two ways. Part of it is surveillance in poorly sampled parts of the state, and the other is part of a new research project that we're just starting this year, looking at properties that have recently found CWD and pulling scrape samples there throughout the season and then over a course of several years to try to figure out the correlation between the number of scrapes that are positive and the number of deer in the area that are positive. Okay. So that way, if we look, in the future, go to a property, pull 25 samples, and 2 scrape samples are positive, then we could say, okay, that means 1% of the population is positive, or 10% of the population is positive. Yeah. I'm not sure what that correlation is going to be yet.
Yeah. For you as a scientist, a researcher, someone who you want to get a hold of that data, and those samples and look at the numbers, what does this mean to you? Is this a huge thing? Is this a huge step?
Successful CWD management hinges on finding the disease early. If you find the disease once it's established, as a state agency, about all you can do is draw a circle around it on a map and let the hunters know, hey, this is where it's at. There's a very narrow window of time when you can actually put proactive management on the ground and slow the spread of it and hold it at bay. And this is one of those tools that allows us to be able to find it early and do that. So yes, it's a huge thing in CWD management.
Yeah. Really, really cool. Fascinating to learn about it. And, some people might roll their eyes because I do it whenever you come on, but thank you for what you do.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoy working with whitetail deer and working with CWD. It's a challenge a lot of times with public perception and that sort of thing. I talked to a guy. Part of my job description is to let people know their deer test positive, and half of them you call, they're gonna be a naysayer and they're not gonna believe you and say they're anti-government. I say I'm anti-government too. I work for them, but it's you got to be a little bit of a skeptic.
Yeah.
But usually through a good conversation, you can convince them that it's the right thing to do to try to manage for it.
Yeah. Yes, Chip. So it's not just science and data. It's also working with people, communication, taking phone calls.
It is public relations.
Public relations. I mean, because ultimately that's what it's all for.
It is. It's a resource we're managing for the state that's owned by the people of the state.
Owned by the people of the state. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah, no matter where you work in this department, you're in public relations.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I learned that the hard way.
Didn't know you were getting into public relations, but here you are. Well, Kamen, thanks again for coming by, educating us, and look forward to talking to you again soon. Thank you.
My pleasure.
He is Kamen Campbell, talking about CWD and deer samples here in the state of Mississippi, finding those scrapes. Hope you enjoyed that. I know I did. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you outdoors.